talk about Truman and Eisenhower. So we're going to look more at their domestic policies today, and kind of what they're talking about in regards to what's going on in the United States. So um, two pretty important presidents when it comes to domestic policy. So we'll get in it today. So return to a peacetime economy. So the U.S. economy continued to grow even after World War II. Obviously, there's going to be increased consumer spending, and also the Servicemen's Readjustment Act is going to be passed. It's known as the GI Bill today. That's really going to help the economy because it's going to provide loans to veterans to attend college, to set up businesses, to buy homes, and it's going to increase spending. This increased spending, I'm sorry, is going to lead to higher prices for goods, which actually is going to lead to rising inflation. So workers went on strike for increased wages to keep up with that inflation. And President Harry Truman basically forced the miners to return to work after a month-long strike, because he feared that there was going to be an energy shortage. Okay, so he is going to try to sit down and try to deal with some of their concerns, but he did force them to go to work. So this is an important thing because this is one of the few times where the government, and during this time period anyway, where the government really gets involved in private business matters. Um, 1946, Americans interested in change elected Republicans in both houses of Congress. And so the Congress proposed the Taft-Hartley Act. And basically, it wanted to cut the power of organized labor. So it wanted to outlaw things like the closed shop. So the closed shop is where there is uh, a place where they only hire union members. Okay, so the businesses are only allowed to hire union members. So states could pass what were called right to work laws. You still see these today. These are still things that are on ballots in some states. I just saw one the other day on a bumper sticker, right here in Collinsville. So um, the unions obviously don't like right to work laws, but basically it outlaws these closed shops. Okay, it also prohibited feather bedding. So feather bedding is the limiting, I'm sorry, of work output in order to create more jobs. Okay, and so Truman vetoed the Taft-Hartley Act, but Congress will pass it in 1947. So they overrode his veto. So Truman's program. So Truman tried to push many domestic measures through Congress. Some included the expansion of Social Security benefits, which obviously still exists today, raising the minimum wage from 40 to 75 cents an hour, and then a broad civil rights bill protecting African Americans. So we're going to talk a little bit more about the minimum wage thing here in a moment. But a lot of these were met with little success with Republicans and conservative Southern Democrats because at the time, and still in many cases, the conservatives, the conservative party has a tendency to favor more of the free market. Okay, so anytime the government gets involved in obstructing the free market, they have an issue with that. Okay, so we'll talk about the minimum wage here. Um, so who's helped by raising the minimum wage? So it sounds like a good idea, and it seems like something that you kids, you high school kids would want because like right now there's a proposal for a $15 an hour minimum wage. Well, the problem with that is it actually ends up taking away jobs that are not meant to be lived on. Okay, so jobs that are meant to be stepping stones into other jobs, and that's jobs that you guys as teenagers, you guys really rely on. So things like working in fast food or working like at retail or something like that. So it's going to help. People think it's going to help those people, but the problem is when you have to pay more than what people are actually worth, you're not going to get as many people in. So what it does is it makes it harder for kids like you guys to actually find jobs. Okay, so if you're somebody who works part time after school, that's going to make it very difficult. Um, but the reality is it helps people who are older, who are 35 years or older. 88% of them are not teens. 36% of them are 20 or 40 or older. 56% are women. 28% have children. 55% work full time, and on average, they earn half of their family's total income. And it's those people that are really getting help. So you guys, as teenagers, really shouldn't want the minimum wage raised because it's basically taking away jobs for you. Because if I'm an employer and I can only hire, I now have to pay $15 an hour, where I could before hire two people, I can now only hire one. Well, I have two applicants. I have one that is a 30-year-old with a pretty steady job history, and then I have another who's a 16-year-old kid who's never had a job. Now, which one of those do you think is going to be more reliable? Well, I'm thinking it's going to be the 30-year-old with the steady job history, so I'm going to hire that person. So that 16-year-old, while before could have had a job for $7.50 an hour, now doesn't have a job. Okay, so that's who it hurts. Okay, so Truman's program. So the election in 1948, it looked as if Truman would not be reelected. And so during his campaign, Truman made speeches that criticized a do-nothing Congress because it had not acted any of his legislative proposals, but some of their own. So Truman won the reelection, won the election, and the Democratic Party also made a comeback, regaining control of both houses of Congress. Even mistakenly, the Chicago paper here, the Chicago Daily Tribune, uh, printed Dewey defeats Truman a little early, and that's Truman there holding that, even though Truman ended up winning. Okay, so Truman's domestic agenda was coined the Fair Deal. So in his State of the Union, he said that Americans had the right to expect a fair deal from their government. And Congress did not support all of Truman's ideas. Minimum wage was increased and Social Security was expanded, but Congress refused to pass national health insurance or to enact specific civil rights legislation. So that's going to be a huge deal when we get into the 1960s. In the next unit, we'll talk about the civil rights movement and kind of some of the things that were going on as a result of that. All right, so Eisenhower. So with the U.S. at war in Korea, Truman's Fair Deal kind of faded because uh, there were other things to worry about, and so did his approval rating. So he chose not to run for re-election, even though he could have. So when he became president, initially it was when FDR died. So FDR was over that halfway point. So Truman could have gone for one more term. But the Republican candidate, Dwight D. Eisenhower, ran with the slogan, "It's time for a change." And so he promised to end the Korean War, and he is going to win in a landslide with his running mate, who is the California Senator Richard Nixon, who we obviously know will eventually become president as well. So Eisenhower's political beliefs were self-described as midway between conservative and liberal. So he called this balance dynamic conservatism. And so on the conservative side, he ended government price and rent controls. He vetoed a school construction bill. He cut aid for public housing while also supporting some tax reductions. So he is cutting spending. But on the liberal side, he did push for the passage of the Federal Highway Act. So he is actually spending money. He's just allocating it in other places. So he provided $25 billion for a 10-year project to construct 40,000 miles of interstate highways. And so you'll still see, like, if you drive like on 5570, there's signs that say like part of the Eisenhower highway system. Okay, and so all of this, these are a lot of the major highways. 55 and 70 are part of that, and so that was part of all that interstate system. So see, this is what those signs look like right here. So Eisenhower also authorized the construction of the Great Lakes St. Lawrence Seaway. And so 3 previous presidents had failed at reaching an agreement with Canada in order to build it. And basically, it's kind of a connection between the U.S. and Canada so that we can trade a little more freely. So Eisenhower easily won his second run for the presidency in 1956 because at this point, the economy is booming. An American transition from a wartime now to a peacetime economy, and so Americans started to become focus their energy on a decade of tremendous prosperity. All right, and that's all I got for you guys today. Don't forget to do your processor. Enjoy the rest of your day.